My childhood home is a live, and it's rewriting reality Reddit horror story. They say memories fade, but this house never forgets. Before I tell you what happened, you need to understand the place I came from. It was a town you'd pass without noticing. Flat land, peeling signs, the smell of fertilizer, and something else you couldn't name. I hadn't been back in over a decade. Not since Mom died. My sister inherited the house, I got the car, and what was left of Dad's watch collection. We both thought we got the better deal. The house was a burden, full of drafts and echoes and doors that swelled shut in the rain. It was supposed to be temporary, my visit. I told myself I'd help Sarah sort through the last boxes in the attic, maybe repaint the porch, maybe get some fresh air before going back to the city. I never imagined I'd get trapped. Not physically, not at first. It started small, like all the worst things do. The first night, I woke up freezing even though the heater was on. The thermostat blinked at me like an eye that didn't want to close. I remember getting out of bed and walking to the hallway, the floorboards soft and warped beneath my feet, like stepping on lungs. The walls seemed too close, as if the whole house was breathing. I blamed the cold for the feeling in my spine, the tightening in my chest. But it wasn't the cold, it was something else. Something watching. In the morning, I found Sarah at the kitchen table, clutching a mug of untouched coffee, staring at nothing. Her eyes were red. I asked if she was okay, and she gave me the sort of answer people give when they've already decided not to tell the truth. "Just tired," she said, but she didn't look tired. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. I tried to joke about the house being haunted, but she didn't laugh. That afternoon, I went up to the attic alone. The air grew thinner the higher I climbed, like the stairs were taking me somewhere above normal breathing. The door resisted, swollen with moisture or something more deliberate. When it finally gave, the smell hit me. Dust, old cardboard, and something sharp, like ozone or burnt copper. The kind of smell that doesn't belong in wood and wool. I didn't notice the box at first. It was in the far corner, half buried under a yellowed quilt and a stack of faded photo albums. It was unmarked, no label, no tape, just a plain box that looked too new to be forgotten. I don't know why I opened it, maybe because the rest of the attic was so loud with memory, and this box was so quiet. Inside were photographs. Hundreds of them. They were all of me, not just childhood shots, but ones I'd never seen before. Me at 10 with a black eye I don't remember getting, me at 16 asleep on a school bus, me at 20, 3 standing in front of a building I've never visited. Some were recent as last week. Same jacket, same scar on my thumb, same everything. But who had taken them? And how had they ended up here? I ran downstairs, the box under my arm, adrenaline smothering my questions. Sarah was gone. Her coffee mug still sat on the table, cracked down the side like a tooth that had split from too much pressure. Her car was in the driveway, her phone too. I called out, searched every room, opened every closet. Nothing, just the hum of the fridge and the ticking of a clock that hadn't worked in years. When I tried to leave, the front door wouldn't open. I twisted the knob, pulled, kicked. The wood held like bone. My phone had no signal, no matter where I stood. Even the windows refused to show me what was outside. They were all fogged from the inside, opaque and unmoving. That was when I heard it. A soft shuffle. Like someone dragging their feet just beyond the wall. I pressed my ear to the plaster and listened. The sound stopped. Then came a whisper. Not from behind the wall, from inside the room. I turned, but no one was there. Only the hallway stretched longer than it should be, like a shadow pulled by the wrong sun. I spent the night on the couch, the box of photos on my chest, as if I could weigh down whatever was inside the house. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard breathing that wasn't mine. On the second day, I tried to call the neighbors. Their house was across the field, visible from the kitchen window. I could see lights on, smoke curling from the chimney. I even saw Mr. Geller in the backyard, hanging up laundry like always. I banged on the window, waved, screamed his name. He didn't look, just kept pinning clothes to the line one by one like he was on repeat, like he was acting out a memory instead of living one. That's when I started to wonder if I had really left the attic. If maybe the door had never opened. If the house had kept me, split me off like a piece of meat to feed on. I checked the mirrors. All of them. I saw myself, but I looked slightly wrong. My mouth stayed closed even when I laughed. My reflection blinked a second too slow. I smashed the bathroom mirror with my fist, just to see if it would bleed. It didn't. But I did. So I knew I was still real, probably. That night, I went back to the attic. I brought a flashlight and a hammer, just in case. The door opened easily this time, as if it wanted me to come back. I found the spot where the box had been. The floorboards looked different there. Newer. I pried them up. Underneath I found another box. This one was metal. Locked. I didn't have the key, but the hammer worked just fine. Inside were tapes. Cassette tapes, labeled by year. 1903, 2008, 2014, the 20. I chose one at random and played it on the old stereo downstairs. Crackled, then came my voice. Not talking. Screaming. Screaming my own name over and over, like I was trying to remember it. Or trying to make someone else remember. The next tape was worse. It was Sarah's voice. Crying. Pleading. Begging someone not to take me. Not again. I dropped the tape and it kept playing even after it hit the floor. No player in sight. That's when I saw the photo on the wall. It hadn't been there before. It showed me and Sarah, children, standing on the porch of this house. But the house looked different, newer. And behind us stood a man. He wore a long coat, a wide hat, his face entirely in shadow. I've never seen that man before. But in the photo, he had his hand on my shoulder. I went room to room after that, tearing down every frame, flipping every photo. They were all different now. All showed that same man, always close, always in shadow. Sometimes his hand was on Sarah's shoulder. Sometimes mine, sometimes both. But never his face. Never a clear view. By the end of the third day, I wasn't sure I was awake anymore. The clocks all ticked backward. The walls breathed louder. The whispers turned into voices. And I started remembering things that hadn't happened. Or hadn't happened yet. A birthday party with no guests. A wedding with no bride. A funeral with no casket. Always in this house. Always watched. Always forgetting. The worst part, I don't think Sarah was taken. I think she escaped. I think she left me here. Maybe that's what the house wants. Someone to stay. A witness. A keeper. A meal. And maybe this is how it begins. Every time. One sibling leaves. The other stays. The house chooses. The house remembers. And now it's my turn to forget. The fourth day began without a sunrise. I know how that sounds, but it's the only way I can describe it. The light outside stayed flat and gray, like the house had settled into some purgatory between hours. I woke up on the kitchen floor with the taste of metal in my mouth, and the photograph of the man still clenched in my hand. My palm had blood around the corners of the frame, as if the image had fought its way into my skin. I remember standing and feeling something shift under my heel. One of the tapes. Warped now, its ribbon pulled out like veins unraveling. I stared at it for a long time, and for a brief second, I was sure it twitched. That was when I stopped trusting anything that moved. Or stayed still. I think the house was waiting for that moment. The moment I doubted everything, even myself, it began to feed me signs, little breadcrumbs of familiarity laced with impossibility. A voicemail from my mother appeared on my phone, time-stamped for yesterday. But she's been dead for years. Her voice was soft and trembling. Don't listen to the floorboards. That's not where we buried him. I dropped the phone. When I picked it up again, the message was gone. No trace, no log. Nothing. Only the faint scent of her perfume, the one she wore in winter, the one she'd dab on the sleeves of her coat. And I could have sworn I was wearing that coat now, though I know I left it in my old apartment. That's when the house started rearranging itself. I'd walk into the bathroom and end up in the pantry. I'd open a closet and find the living room. One hallway looped into itself endlessly. I walked down it for 15 minutes before realizing I was following myself. Literally. I turned a corner and saw my own back disappearing into the dark. I didn't follow. Not that time. The worst was when I entered the guest bedroom and found the attic. I was sure it was the wrong door, but somehow the house had folded space, curled it like paper. I couldn't make a map anymore. The layout changed depending on what I was thinking. If I tried to find a way out, the house would double in on itself. If I gave up and sat down, it would taunt me with glimpses of the front yard through a hallway that led nowhere. I began writing notes to myself on the walls. Not that it helped. The house erased them, sometimes leaving the pen behind just to mock me. I carved words into the floorboards instead, words like REL, TRUH, and Sararched. But even those would slowly fill in, the wood growing back over them like scar tissue. I considered breaking a window, just one. But every time I looked for something heavy enough, a chair, a lamp, even the hammer, it was gone. As if the house had anticipated me. I tried punching one once in a moment of desperation. My hand passed through it like mist. But the glass didn't shatter. It swallowed. My skin came out wet and cold, as though I'd reached through a pond instead of a pane. That night, I found a room I didn't recognize. It was small and circular, with no corners, just curved walls covered in wallpaper that writhed slightly under the flashlight. It was filled with toys. Old ones, a spinning top, a music box, a jack-in, the box that opened on its own with a slow, gasping wheeze. They were mine. I remembered each one. But they weren't where I'd left them. Some had been lost in the move. Some I'd buried in the yard as a child, trying to make wishes come true. And yet here they were, gleaming untouched, waiting. On the far wall, a mirror. Perfectly clean, unlike the others. I looked into it, and the reflection blinked out of sync. That was the first time I screamed. Not out of fear, but out of rage. Rage that something could steal my own face and wear it better than I did. Rage that I was still here, still trapped, still watching the house bend around my thoughts like clay. I grabbed the jack-in, the box, and hurled it at the mirror. It passed through the glass like it wasn't there. So I followed. I stepped into the mirror. It felt like passing through static. On the other side, I was in the same room. Or so I thought. But the wallpaper was still. The toys were gone. The air was heavier, and when I looked into the mirror behind me, there was no reflection, just an empty room. That was when I knew I wasn't in the house anymore. Or maybe I was in a deeper part of it, somewhere beneath the skin. This new space had no sounds, no echoes, just silence so thick it felt like pressure on the chest. I wandered through corridors lit by invisible sources, walls that pulsed with dim red light like veins. I found doors that opened onto memories. My 5th birthday, a high school breakup, the time Dad left and didn't come back for 2 days. They played like holograms, looping until I turned away. Some of them weren't mine. I saw Sarah's first kiss. I saw Mom crying in the basement, holding a letter she never showed us. I saw the man from the photo standing in a nursery that hadn't existed. And always, his hand hovered over someone's shoulder. I began to suspect the house wasn't just remembering us, it was made of us. Of our regrets, our secrets, our omissions. We'd fed it with our childhoods, and now it wanted more. It wanted every version of us that could have been, every unlived possibility, every suppressed truth. It was collecting, curating, archivist of the forgotten. I kept moving, drawn towards something I couldn't name. Eventually, I reached a chamber that defied geometry. It had too many corners and none at all. A soundless clock tower of a room. And there, in the center, stood Sarah. Or something like her. She was turned away, hair longer than I remembered, dress stained with something dark. When she looked at me, her eyes were empty, not dead, not blind, just blank. I called her name. Her lips moved. No sound. I stepped forward and she recoiled. Then she pointed behind me. I turned. The man from the photos stood at the edge of the room. This time, I could almost see his face. Almost. It shifted every time I tried to focus. Sometimes my father, sometimes a stranger, sometimes even my own face staring back. He raised a hand and beckoned. Sarah screamed. Not with her mouth, but with everything else. The walls shook, the floor split. The house wanted me to go with him. To become another photograph, another echo, another sacrifice. But I ran to her instead. I grabbed her hand, and it was ice. She looked at me again, and something returned to her eyes. Recognition. Pain. Then she whispered something I'll never forget. You have to leave me here. This place needs someone to remember. I shook my head, but the room was already collapsing. The man lunged impossibly fast, but Sarah stepped between us. She pushed me hard, and I fell through the floor, through space, through myself. I landed in the attic, back where it all began, covered in dust, heart pounding, hand still wet from hers. The tapes were gone. The photos, too. The attic was just an attic again, and the front door stood wide open, light spilling in like an apology. I didn't look back. I walked out barefoot, blinking against the sudden brightness. The neighbor's house looked normal. The air felt real. Birds chirped. My phone buzzed with a dozen missed calls from Sarah, but she wasn't in the house. She never would be. Not again. I think she traded places with me. Gave up her chance to leave so I could remember. That's what the house wanted. Not prisoners. Witnesses. Someone to keep the story alive, to feed the house with retellings. And now, every time I close my eyes, I see new rooms. Rooms I never entered. Secrets I never knew. But they're there. Waiting. Because the house may forget your name. But it never forgets your face. I left the house, but it never really let go. That's something they don't warn you about. How escape isn't always the end. Sometimes it's the beginning of something worse. The weeks after I returned to the city passed in a blur. I moved through them like a shadow of myself, touching objects to confirm their solidity, watching strangers' reflections for signs they weren't real. I rented a new apartment, far from my old life, told friends I'd been dealing with grief and needed time. They nodded with those eyes people wear when they're afraid to ask questions. I didn't blame them. Even I couldn't explain what had happened, not in any way that sounded sane. But the signs followed me. The first came in the form of a dream. I was back in the nursery, the one that never existed, with the spinning mobile made of teeth and feathers. The walls pulsed like lungs. Sarah stood at the window, facing away, her silhouette flickering as though caught between frames. She turned to me and mouthed, "You're still in it." I woke up choking, the air thick with that same burnt copper scent from the attic. My bed sheets were damp with sweat, or maybe something colder. I wanted to dismiss it as trauma, a lingering memory, nothing more. But then the second sign came. I received a package. No return address. Inside was a single photograph, me asleep on my couch, taken from above as if the ceiling had eyes. My first instinct was to check every inch of my apartment. I tore down fixtures, ripped open walls, pulled apart smoke detectors. I found nothing. No cameras. No wires. Nothing but a sense that something had watched and then vanished, leaving behind only proof. The third sign was worse. One morning I woke to find my apartment rearranged. Not wildly. Just slightly. Enough that I almost didn't notice. A lamp moved 3 inches to the left, a book on the wrong shelf, my toothbrush pointing the opposite direction. At first I thought I'd done it in my sleep. I installed cameras. Not just 1 or 2. I bought out a whole tech store and rigged the place with motion sensors, infrared, time lapse. For 3 nights, nothing happened. Then, on the 4th, I checked the footage. At exactly 3:17 a.m., the screen flickered. For 3 seconds, all the feeds went black. When they returned, my front door was open. No one entered. No one left. But on the table sat a new photograph. Sarah again. This time she was standing in front of a mirror, her face reflected perfectly but her body absent. I kept the photo. I don't know why. Maybe part of me hoped there were clues I was missing. Maybe part of me didn't want to forget. I started dreaming in reverse. Entire nights where I watched moments unspool backward. Coffee reabsorbing into cups, conversations ending before they began, people vanishing from crowded streets until I stood alone. One night, I watched myself walk backward out of the house, then forward into it again. As if I were trapped in a pendulum of time, swinging between choices I didn't remember making. That's when I began hearing the phrase, not in dreams, in real life, from strangers, on trains, in grocery stores, whispered behind me. You have to remember it. No context, no eye contact. They never acknowledged me, just said the words and moved on like actors in a scene I didn't understand. I started researching, not about haunted houses. Those stories were too clean. I looked into memory architecture, thought loops, quantum consciousness. I found threads of truth in old forums filled with missing posts and user accounts that blinked out mid-conversation. They all circled around the same idea. There are places that remember us better than we remember ourselves. And when those places are forgotten, they don't fade, they adapt. They seek. I stopped sleeping. I knew the dreams weren't dreams anymore. They were visits, invitations, traps. I tried burning the photograph. It wouldn't catch. I tried soaking it. The water turned black, but the image remained. I buried it under concrete. The next morning, it was on my pillow. I started writing everything down. Every change, every sign, every anomaly, but the pages kept going missing or worse, rewriting themselves. I'd pen a paragraph about finding scratches on the inside of my windows, and when I returned, the sentence read, "The house is patient." I moved apartments again, slept in hotels, traveled constantly, but the signs followed. Sometimes subtle, like the same picture hanging in different lobbies. Sometimes blatant, a room number that changed as I approached, a stranger humming the same melody Sarah used to sing when we were kids. The melody we never recorded, that no one else should know. One night, I boarded a train to nowhere in particular. I just needed to move, to stay in motion. I picked a line that cut through a half-dozen cities, thinking I'd feel anonymous. I didn't. In the 3rd hour, the train slowed inexplicably. The conductor announced a delay, then silence. Out the window, I saw a house. That house. Middle of nowhere. Shouldn't have been there. Shouldn't even exist outside of memory. But there it was. Peeling paint, warped porch. The same cracked window upstairs. And standing at the edge of the woods beside it, Sarah. Or what looked like her. Same stance, same dress. Her mouth opened, but I couldn't hear her. The train started moving again before I could process it. I tried to tell someone. Anyone. But when I turned to the other passengers, their faces were wrong. Not monstrous. Just blank. As if someone had sketched their expressions from memory and forgotten the details. I locked myself in the train's restroom and waited until we reached the end of the line. I didn't sleep again after that. I barely ate. My world became filtered through suspicion. Every sound a threat, every shadow a doorway. But it was the mirror in my new apartment that broke me. I avoided it for days, covered it, moved furniture in front of it. But one night I caught a glimpse while brushing my teeth. My reflection wasn't copying me. It stood still, staring. Then it raised a hand. I dropped the toothbrush. My heart stopped. It pointed to the left. I turned, and there on the counter was another photograph. This time, not of me or Sarah. A room I didn't recognize, circular, wallpapered, toys strewn across the floor, and in the center a mirror, the same one from before. Except now, a figure stood in it, not Sarah, not me. Something else. Something older, wearing the skin of memory like a costume. The message was clear. I wasn't out. I never left. The house hadn't let me go. It had merely pushed me into another layer, another version of the same loop. A wider cage. I began to suspect the truth wasn't that I escaped. It was that the house had grown, expanded, widened its reach until the whole world became its floor plan, that it had used me as a doorway. That's when I decided to return, not to run, not to hide, but to confront. Because if the house was in me now, if it lived through my memories, then maybe I could unmake it by remembering the right thing, the original thing, the crack in the mirror. The first door that should never have opened. I booked a car, packed nothing, wore the coat Mom used to love. The road stretched too long, the sky staying gray for hours longer than it should. Time no longer obeyed. By the time I reached the hill where the house should have been, the road vanished. Just dirt, just trees, and in the clearing, a different kind of silence. Not absence of sound, the presence of watching. I stepped forward, and the house welcomed me, not with lights, not with warmth, but with that slow, aching breath it always took before feeding. And I whispered, "I remember you." That was the key. That was the beginning, or maybe the end, or maybe both. Because I wasn't returning to the house. I was becoming it, and the walls had been waiting. The air tasted like old wallpaper and memory the moment I stepped through the threshold again. The front door opened on its own. No sound, no creak, just the quiet swish of surrender. It wasn't dramatic. There were no screams or shifting shadows. Only stillness so thick it made my lungs forget how to breathe. But I was ready for that. I knew the house would try to confuse me, bury me in its nostalgia and lies. So I repeated a name under my breath, mine, over and over, like a mantra, grounding myself in syllables that the house hadn't yet claimed. But even that began to falter as I crossed the threshold and the door shut behind me. Not slammed, not locked, just closed, as if it had never opened. The foyer looked the same, or almost. The edges of furniture were too sharp, like reality had been sketched in with a trembling hand. The wallpaper shimmered faintly, like skin about to shed. And the smell was thicker now, a mix of old rot, copper, and something sweet and rotten. It reminded me of Sarah's perfume, only broken, as if time had soured it. I reached into my coat and gripped the small mirror I'd brought with me. Not to look into. No, I'd learned my lesson. But to test reflections. I held it at an angle, watching the room behind me, and waited for the moment my image would disobey. But the mirror showed nothing. No room. No me. Just a vast white fog. I wasn't surprised. The house was changing the rules again. I stepped forward and found the hallway stretching longer than it should have. The photos along the wall, the ones that once depicted birthdays, holidays, smiles frozen in time, were now blank, not removed, just washed, as if someone had bleached memory itself. I touched one and felt heat. The frame burned the tips of my fingers, but I didn't pull away. Pain was useful. Pain meant I still belonged to myself. I followed the hall deeper, past where the kitchen should have been. Instead, I found a staircase spiraling down, an impossibility, because the house never had a basement. But this wasn't the house. Not really. It was something wearing its skin, stitched from recollection and grief. I descended. The air thickened with every step. Breathing became an act of will. My heartbeat slowed as if my body were trying to sync with the deeper pulse of the place. At the bottom was a door. Not wood. Not metal. Something in between. Its surface pulsed like flesh, and when I touched it, it sighed. I pushed, and the door melted inward. What lay beyond was a cathedral of echoes. The walls were impossibly tall, the ceiling lost in darkness. Every surface was covered in photographs. Thousands of them, maybe millions, pinned, taped, soon directly into the structure. And every single one showed me. Or Sarah. Or versions of us I didn't recognize. Wearing clothes we never owned. Standing in places we'd never been. But always the same eyes. Always the same feeling of recognition and wrongness fighting for dominance. I moved slowly, afraid that running might trigger something. Like emotion, sensitive trap. The floor squelched beneath my feet, soft and wet like peat bog. Each step left a faint imprint, which slowly disappeared behind me. No turning back now, not ever. In the center of the room was a well. Not water-filled, not dry, just dark, a depth that bent light around it. I approached and saw my reflection again, but it wasn't copying me. It stood still while I leaned forward. Its eyes bled ink. Its mouth was a jagged line. It opened slowly and I braced for a scream. But instead, it whispered, "You brought it with you." I stepped back. My breath caught in my throat. I turned in a circle, trying to see what meant. That's when I noticed my shadow was gone. No matter the angle, no matter the light, none of it cast me onto the floor. But something else was casting a shadow in my place. Something taller, broader, with hands too long and a head that tilted in ways no neck should. It stood behind me. I felt its breath on my collar. I didn't turn. I didn't move. "You were always going to return," it said in a voice that wasn't a voice. More like a feeling pressed into my skull. "You are the house now." The guest became the host. I shook my head. "No," I said aloud, surprising myself with the firmness of it. "Not yours. Not yet." The shadow didn't laugh. It just stepped forward. And with each step it took, the room changed. The photographs peeled from the walls and turned to ash mid-air. The ceiling lowered, folding like lungs collapsing inward. The air roared with a wind that had no source. The well pulsed with light, violent, white cracking. The house was breaking, or being reborn. And I was the catalyst. I pulled the mirror from my pocket and held it up. The shadow froze, it hissed. The sound cracked the nearest wall, sent fissures crawling through the photos. "You can't see what you've become," I said, stepping backward toward the well. "But I can." And then, I threw the mirror in. It didn't fall. It hovered over the mouth of the well, spinning, reflecting hundreds of versions of me, of Sarah, of the house, all layered on top of each other like oil and water. Then it shattered. The pieces flew outward, embedding themselves in the walls, the floor, the ceiling. The shadow screamed. The house convulsed. Every photo burst into flame, but the fire was cold. It spread too fast, eating everything but me. I stood in the center of it all, untouched. The flames swallowed the well, the cracked. I floored again, but this time there was no attic. I landed in a field, sunlight, real sunlight, the kind that warms skin, the kind that casts shadows. Mine was back. The house was gone, not burned, not in ruins, just missing, like a memory finally allowed to fade. I stood and turned in a circle. No trees, no road, just grass, wind, and the scent of something clean. I thought I was alone until I saw the figure on the horizon. Not Sarah, not the man, just a girl walking slowly, dragging something behind her, a toy box. As she approached, I recognized the Jack in the box, the one from the circular room. She dropped it at my feet and said, "Do you remember how it ends?" I opened my mouth, but before I could answer, she vanished. The field faded, the wind died, and I was alone again. But the box remained, waiting. I didn't open it. Not yet. I knew it was a choice. The final one. Open it and return, or leave it sealed and live. I sat beside it and waited for night to fall. It didn't. Not for a long time. And when it did, the stars above me spelled out a single word. Not in letters, but in pattern, in rhythm, in light. Remember. And I finally understood. The house doesn't haunt places. It haunts minds. It nests in memory, in trauma, in the echoes of what we refuse to face. We are its walls. We are its doors. And sometimes, without knowing, we build rooms for it inside ourselves. But if we remember, true, we can tear them down. Or at least, keep them locked. For now, I closed my eyes. I waited. And in the darkness behind my lids, I listened. Not for footsteps, not for breath, but for silence. True silence. The kind that means nothing is watching. Nothing is waiting. And when I opened my eyes, the box was gone. But my shadow remained. Just me. For now. The days that followed weren't real. Not in the way time used to feel. They slid past me like oil over glass, quiet and distorted, impossible to hold on to. I walked through my life like a tourist in a replica of my memories. I went to the store. I answered emails. I even smiled at neighbors. But nothing felt anchored. The food had no taste. Music had no weight. People looked at me and saw someone whole, but I could feel the echo still humming beneath my skin. The house may have disappeared from sight, but it had carved itself into me. I didn't speak to anyone about what happened. How could I? The words felt too fragile. I tried once to record my story on tape. An analog recorder, something old. Something that couldn't be erased with a single click. I sat in a quiet room, pressed record, and spoke for hours. When I played it back, it was silent. The tape had recorded nothing. Not static, not a hum, just void. Like the house had erased the sound before it even touched the magnetic strip. I destroyed the recorder. The pieces crumbled too easily, as if they'd been hollow all along. That's when I knew I was being watched again. Not constantly, but impulses. I'd feel it behind my shoulder, in the silence before a phone rings, in the shadow that doesn't belong to anything nearby. The presence didn't come from outside me. It came from within. It had followed me out not as a ghost, but as a seed, something planted. And now it was blooming. The mirror in my bathroom fogged at odd angles, like someone was breathing behind the glass. Messages appeared in condensation. Fractured phrases like "she stayed" or "we are the frame." At first, I wiped them away. Then I started answering them. Not because I expected a response, but because I needed to know where I ended and the house began. I told myself I was still real, that my choices mattered, that I wasn't just another room it was building inside itself. But one night I found a door in my apartment that didn't exist before. It looked like a closet. Simple, white, old brass handle, tarnished and familiar. I didn't open it, not that night. I stared at it for hours, waiting for it to vanish. It didn't. It was still there in the morning, still there the next evening. I avoided it. I slept on the couch. I moved to a hotel. But it followed. Room 8014. Same handle. The hotel manager swore there was no closet in that room, but I saw it. I even touched it. Cold, too cold, like metal that had never known sun. I left the hotel, tried to disappear, rented a cabin in the middle of nowhere. But the moment I unpacked, I heard the quiet click of a door unlatching in the bedroom. It was waiting, always waiting. And that's when I realized it wasn't following me. It was me. Or rather, it was inside me, unfolding itself like blueprints written in a language I didn't understand. Every time I tried to escape, I was leading it to new ground, giving it more space to grow. The house was never a place. It was a pattern, a recursion, and I was its architect now. I became obsessed with floor plans. Old ones. Lost ones. I found notebook sketches I didn't remember drawing. Spirals. Staircases that ended in themselves, rooms labeled with names instead of functions. Regret. Silence. Ah, Sarah. Always Sarah. I started seeing her in reflections again. Not clearly. Not like before. Just hints. A face behind mine. A hand brushing my hair in the mirror. A whisper when the wind wasn't moving. I tried to speak to her. Asked questions. Begged for answers. All I got were glimpses. Shadows. And then, one night, a reply. I was dreaming, I think. I stood in a hallway with no ceiling. Stars wheeling overhead like gears. The walls were made of books, and every page was a memory. I pulled one at random. It was Sarah's laugh, age 6, playing in the sprinkler. I pulled another. Me at 17, looking at a college rejection letter I never told anyone about. Then I heard her voice, clear and quiet. "You're almost to the center there." But she wasn't there. Just a doorway. One I'd seen before, in the deepest part of the real house. The one we were told never to open. The one Dad nailed shut after Mom tried to walk through it and came back wrong. I stepped forward. I didn't hesitate. Not this time. And when I passed through, I didn't wake up. Instead, I arrived. I was no longer dreaming. I was standing in the house. The true house. The root of all the others. It was endless. Not in size, but in time. Each room a version. A timeline. A life unlived. One showed me as a doctor, another as a convict. One room held a crib. Another a coffin. Some doors led to laughter. Others to screams that never ended. I wandered dazed until I reached a familiar hallway. The photos were back, but the faces were mixed. Sarah and me fused, blurred, shifting between roles. Sometimes she was the sibling, sometimes the stranger, sometimes the house itself. At the end of the hallway stood a mirror, cracked but not broken. And in its reflection, I saw her. Not behind me, not beside me. Inside me, her voice echoed once more. "You've built enough rooms. Now finish the story." I reached into the mirror. It didn't resist this time. My hand passed through, warm and thick like blood. I felt her fingers touch mine, and then pull. Hard. I was yanked into the mirror. Not through, not across, but down, through layers of time and thought and trauma. I fell into the story, into the foundation, into the first brick ever laid. And there at the root, I saw it. The beginning, before the house had shape of the rules. Just an idea, a seed of grief so dense it folded in on itself. I saw Sarah crying in the attic after Mom died. I saw myself watching, too scared to comfort her. I saw the man. Not a monster, not a demon, just a presence, born from her sorrow, fed by my silence. It didn't enter the house. We invited it, built it, loved it. And when it became too heavy, we forgot it, buried it in stories, in rooms, in locks and doors and dreams. But forgetting doesn't kill a memory. It just teaches it to wait, and it waited decades, generations. Until we returned. Until I carried it out with me. I knelt there at the root, holding the first brick in my hands. It pulsed with heat, with hunger, but also with hope. It wanted to become something else. Not horror. Not fear. Just real. I pressed it to my chest. Let it burn. Let it hurt. Let it fill me with every moment I tried to hide. And then, finally, I said her name aloud. Not just Sarah. Her full name. The one she hated. The one Mom only used when she sang lullabies. And the house trembled. Not with anger. With release. The walls peeled away. The ceilings lifted. The echoes softened. The house was unbuilding itself. Slowly. Delicately. Like a wound being cleaned. And when I opened my eyes again, I was in my apartment. Normal. Bright. Morning light pouring in. The air still. My mirror reflected only me. But I wasn't the same. My eyes held rooms. My breath carried hallways. My bones hummed with foundations. I was the house. But I was also the one who left it behind. I stood stretched and heard the floor creak beneath me. Just once. Just enough. A memory. A thank you. A goodbye. Or maybe a beginning. They say the past is a place you can't go back to, but they're wrong. You can go back. You can even live there if you're not careful. You just have to forget the way out. That's what the house taught me. That forgetting is not the end of memory. It's the soil in which it thrives. I left that place, yes. I walked away. I watched it collapse inward like a dying lung, watched its impossible architecture unravel in silence. I buried it in the folds of time, sealed it behind names and reasons and the calm, numb stories you tell when someone asks how you're doing. I'm fine, I would say. Just tired. But the house remained in the quiet parts of me. Not as a building. Not even as a memory. It was rhythm now. Cadence, the strange way my footsteps echoed too long down hallways that weren't there. It lived in the flicker of a light bulb just before it failed. It whispered through the voice in my head that sometimes spoke in Sarah's tone, not her words, just the shape of her fear. The funny thing is, the more I returned to ordinary life, the more I understood that the world outside the house had cracks too. Hairline fractures in the illusion of normal. A shadow that lingered too long. A street corner that felt like a loop. A stranger mouthing your name when they shouldn't even know it. The house wasn't unique. It was just the first place I noticed. And slowly, inevitably, I began to see others. Places that pulsed with that same wrongness. An apartment building that always had one window blacked out, no matter the time of day. A park where the swings swayed even when the air was still. A motel with a room that never had guests but always had fresh sheets. I didn't seek them out. They revealed themselves to me. Like I was marked. Like I had become a kind of tuning fork for unreality. I took notes. At first, just observations, then patterns, then maps. I filled notebooks with floor plans I didn't recognize until after I drew them. One night, I sketched a spiral staircase I'd never seen before. And the next day I walked past a building under renovation and saw it in perfect detail through the open scaffolding. Another time, I dreamed of a red door in the middle of a field. Woke up sweating. Found a photo in my inbox from an untraceable sender. A red door in the middle of a field, no message. No subject line, just I deleted it. It came back 2 days later, printed, in my mailbox, still warm. I knew what it meant. The house was calling or something like it. But I didn't answer, not yet. I wanted to know the rules first. I thought if I could understand the pattern, see the edges of the labyrinth, I could find the center without losing myself. I was wrong. Because the house isn't a maze. It's a mirror, and the longer you stare into it, the more it shows you things you were never meant to see. I stopped sleeping, not because I feared dreams, but because the dreams stopped being separate. I would close my eyes on the couch and wake up in a room that wasn't mine, in clothes I didn't own, staring at versions of myself who didn't look surprised to see me. I started seeing doorways and reflections. Not behind me, not beside me. In me, places I didn't remember walking through. Rooms I didn't know I'd built. And always. Sarah, she was never whole, never stable. One night she was 6, clutching a stuffed bear. Another she was 50, her face lined with time I hadn't lived. She never spoke, just looked at me like she was waiting, or warning. I tried to ignore her. I tried to bury the story. But stories are like roots. You can't cut them out. You can only dig deeper. I started recording again. Not on tape. On paper. Pen and ink. Nothing digital. I wrote everything I remembered, everything I feared, everything I couldn't prove. I called it fiction. People liked it. They thought it was clever. Dark. Atmospheric. But it wasn't a story. It was a map, a confession, a door. And when I finished the last line, I heard a knock. Not at the front door. From inside the walls. Just once. Sharp, deliberate. As if something had been waiting for me to remember the ending. I stood heart pounding and turned toward the hallway. It was too long, it bent in the wrong place. And at the end of it, a door I hadn't seen before. Not white, not brass-handled. Black, smooth, silent. The same door from the photo. The one in the field. I didn't hesitate. I knew this was the last room, the final chapter. I walked toward it, each step heavy with the weight of every room I'd ever walked through. Every choice, every silence, every memory I'd buried beneath narrative. The handle was cold, but not unfriendly. It fit my palm like it had been waiting for it. I turned it. The door opened, and I stepped through, into a room with no walls, just sky, just wind. Just a vast horizon that shimmered like the edge of a dream. Sarah stood there. Whole. Still, eyes bright with something that wasn't joy or fear but understanding. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She just said one word. Finally, I asked her what this was, where we were. She said, "This is the end." And the beginning. The house was never a prison, it was a question. What question? I asked. Her eyes darkened. What do you do with the things you refuse to forget? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. The room did. It folded around me. Not like walls, but like arms, embracing, accepting. And in that moment I understood. The house wasn't trying to trap me. It was trying to teach me. Memory isn't linear. Trauma isn't a locked door. Grief isn't a ghost. They are rooms. And sometimes, to heal, you don't escape the house. You walk through every room. You look at every photo. You sit with every version of yourself until you can say, "I see you. I remember you. And it's okay now." Sarah took my hand. We stood there as the world reassembled itself. Not around us. With a new house. One we chose. One built not from silence, but from story. I never saw her again after that. Not really. Sometimes I catch her reflection in a passing window. Sometimes I hear her humming a melody we used to know. But she's not trapped anymore. Neither am I. The house is still out there. I know that. I feel it in the spaces between words. In the dreams people don't talk about. In the stories that end too suddenly. It's waiting for someone to forget, for someone to remember, for someone to knock. And when they do, I'll be here. Not as a prisoner, not as a victim, but as a guide, a keeper of the rooms. Because now I understand. The house doesn't want to hurt you. It just wants to be seen, to be known, to be remembered. And if you're reading this, if you feel the pull of doors that never were, of stairs that don't end, of mirrors that watch you back, don't be afraid. You're not lost. You're just walking home. Enjoyed the video? Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell so you never miss an update.